are some of the things that you do to calm down a very aggressive and upset dog? Because I got some dogs in my neighborhood that have been terrorizing me for years.
Well, so the first step is basically getting the dog under control. So there's physical corrections that doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to hurt the dog, but it's basically the dog getting to understand that all those behaviors that they are showing to get basically a lot of them are afraid of you, so they become defensive, and over time they act way more aggressive, and they are in that state of mind where they feel like they are ready to go and deliver a bite because they just practiced their mentality for a very long time. But in reality, it comes down from them not knowing what to do in that situation. When they see a stranger, they feel threatened, and there can be many different reasons for that. So the first step would be to get the dog to understand that whoever is handling them, whoever is responsible for them, will take the actions necessary to keep them safe and to deal with the situation, so the dog does not have to do it themselves. And so the dog is only going to feel that they can leave it up to you to do it if you're firm enough where when they try to be defensive, you're telling them, no, stop it. Like, I got it, I can handle this. If you don't give them that impression, then whenever they feel vulnerable or threatened, they become defensive and they become aggressive. So any dog that is like, or even if they're not aggressive, maybe they're really like rambunctious and out of control, they're bouncing around and you're trying to get their attention, but they don't pay attention to you. You need to learn to get their attention first. And there's techniques, again, with pressure, there's controlled pressure that it won't hurt the dog, but will get their attention. So you can always try with treats or a ball, but what when the dog decides to completely ignore that, and then they are bouncing around on the leash and jumping on everybody, jumping on elderly people and little kids. And again, even if they're not aggressive, they can cause a lot of problems just by behaving that way. So I would like to go and address it right to the root of the problem, which is telling the dog that they need to stop that behavior immediately. Once they settle down a little bit, you can follow up with guidance, instructions on what you expect them to do instead. That's when obedience would kick in. If you're only doing positive reinforcement, like giving them treats and food and toys, but they ignore that, they're kind of deciding when they behave and when they don't. And I feel like to fit in society with all the different variables that we're going to run into every day with your dog, if they are not equipped to deal with those situations, knowing that you're in charge of it, you basically have unpredictable dogs. You don't know what to expect from them any given day.
I truly wonder, have any dogs ever bitten you?
I mean, I have gotten bit, nothing severe. I have gotten bitten, a few times. I work under a lot of pressure. So a lot of my classes, like I'm doing this weekend, for example, there will be a minimum of 10 dogs all the way to 30 dogs in a single training session that I have never met before. I have never met these owners before, and they are all out of control. Like the majority of them have aggressive behaviors. They are very stressed out and agitated because a lot of them, they don't even come out of the house. So with that being said, I'm putting myself in that mess and trying to handle them. And a lot of times I'll get bit because the owners don't know how to handle the dog. Obviously, that's why they're there. And so even the little process of me like trying to take, control of the situation to help them, and also paying attention to my surroundings, there's a chance of me getting bitten. But there's no one else doing what I do. So the percentage of time that I would get bit is like very small. No one else is putting themselves in between, this many aggressive dogs on a regular basis to be able to say I get bit like, a few times a year, very minimal bites. I may never needed stitches or go to the hospital or anything like it. Literally my hand, a little nip here and there will obviously happen.
Talk about your most difficult case when dealing with a dog, and what did you do in that situation?
Again, the majority of dogs that come to me, they are very stressed out. They have gotten away with bad behaviors for a very long time. The owners don't have any idea on how to deal with these dogs. Sometimes they have isolated them for many years at home, and then they finally see my videos and they find hope again. So now they're dragging these dogs out of the house to be trained after years of no training and the dog being aggressive and just isolated. So I'm dealing with a lot of backup, like bad habits, uh, and Some of them can be pretty stressful to deal with just because the dogs are older and getting away with it for so long, and they're so determined that the way that they are currently behaving is the only way. So when you try to address it, they are more stressed out and fighting back. Um, and the biggest trouble is I got the dog under control, but then the owner has to reinforce it. So when they're dealing with that much intensity of stress and anxiety, and the dog is just completely completely unstable, and I know what I'm doing. So even then, I know what I'm doing. It's still not easy. It's still not as smooth as like you would want it to be. But then I have to handle the dog back to the owner and say, okay, now do what I just did, and then it's a matter of getting them to practice. So I feel more confident, of course, in my ability to handle these dogs and make amazing progress with them, more so than giving them back to the owners. I have a really high success rate, even with training the owners how to do it. It's a lot of work. I'm told that I'm very patient with a lot of the owners, even more so than the dogs, because the dogs, I get them to comply pretty quickly, but then they need reinforcement. You're not going to break these years of bad behaviors, which is a habit that they have had for years of repeating that every single time they see a stranger, they become aggressive, for example. You're not going to just revert that all in one day. I get the dog to start to make huge progress in one single day. But for you to actually permanently change the dog's behavior, you would need to repeat that every encounter that they have with the triggers that cause them to act the way that they're acting in a negative way. So if I'm not handling these dogs every single time, whoever is handling them needs to learn what to do. A lot of these dogs actually that you see in my videos, that are really out of control, really really bad, misbehaving, if they were to just remain with me, they would like their behavior would like permanently change. Within a month, there would be different dogs, like all of them. And if they were with me, like every single, I would be able to start doing things with them that they can't do right now immediately from day one. Like the vast majority of the dogs that I work with, they are currently out of control. If they were handled by me every day, they would be going to the pet stores, they'll be going downtown to walk around. But I know how to handle the dogs safely. I know how to make the dogs feel more comfortable in these situations that they are uncomfortable in. And training the owners, on the other hand, is a whole nother story. Again, I do pretty well, but that's still the biggest struggle, is to get them to follow through.
I never thought about that point of view where you have to train the dog and then train the owner to be able to train the dog. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, because training and having a good relationship with your dog is based on your lifestyle with your dog. Like it is a lifestyle. It's a matter of how you talk to your dog, how you feed your dog, every little interaction with your dog, how you feel around your dog. Um, how good you are with establishing rules and structure for your dog. If you don't know how to do that, you get a dog that's more afraid of things, more insecure. They're more unstable because they just don't know what to do in any given situation. So the owners really need to learn to understand the dog and then how to communicate with the dog.